friends, it's me, Mrs. Cohen, here to read you another story. And I realized I picked another story about birds. And I also realized that that's because I love birds. And I'm outside right now in my backyard, and you can kind of hear some birds if you listen carefully. I hear some cars right now. Once the cars stop, you can usually hear birds. And we even have a birdhouse right up there. I don't know if you can zoom in, but you can see they bring lots of feathers and straw and all kinds of things in there. I don't know if anybody's home right now, but it's pretty cool to see how they build their nest in there. And we have a bird feeder over there by our garden. Can you zoom in on that? It's hanging over there. The garden hasn't been grown yet this year, but we have some birds who visit us over there. I like to look out while I eat my breakfast in the morning to see if I can see any birds. My favorite bird is the great blue heron, but those usually live near the water because they eat fish and crabs and things like that. But in my backyard, I usually see a lot of sparrows. They're kind of brownish, and we see some titmouses, and those are kind of gray, titmice. Then we also see cardinals, those are red, and we see blue jays, those are blue. And those are mostly the birds we see in our backyard. So today I'm going to read you guys a book called Flap Your Wings by P.D. Eastman. This is the same author who wrote the story, The Best Nest, that I read to you the first time I read a story. It's called Flap Your Wings. It says, an egg lay in the path. A boy came down the path. He saw the egg. He looked around. He saw flamingos and frogs and turtles and alligators. Whose egg is this? He called, but nobody answered. Then the boy looked up. He saw an empty nest in a tree. Here is an egg without a nest, he said, and there is a nest without an egg. The boy climbed the tree. He put the egg in the nest, and then he went away. Mr. and Mrs. Bird came home. They were surprised to find an egg in their nest. That's not our egg, said Mrs. Bird. Look how big it is. But it is an egg, and it's in our nest, said Mr. Bird. If an egg is in your nest, you sit on it and keep it warm. It doesn't matter whose egg it is. All right, said Mrs. Bird, but I wonder what kind of bird will come out of that egg. They took turns keeping the egg warm. First, Mrs. Bird sat on it, then Mr. Bird sat on it, and sometimes, because it was so big, they both sat on it. One day, Mrs. Bird heard a squeaking noise. Help, she said, this egg is squeaking. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Mr. Bird came back to the nest. He listened to the egg. The egg is not squeaking, he said. It's our baby that is squeaking. He is ready to come out of the egg. Mr. and Mrs. Bird waited. Squeak, 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 squeak. Squeak, scratch, crackle. And there was the baby. Mr. Bird was very excited. It's Junior, he shouted. What a beautiful baby. Junior opened his mouth. It was a big mouth. It was full of teeth. That's the funniest looking baby I ever saw, said Mrs. Bird. Something is wrong. I don't think he's our baby at all. He's in our nest, so he must be ours, said Mr. Bird. His mouth is open. That means he's hungry. And when your baby is hungry, you feed him. Mr. and Mrs. Bird went away to get some food for Junior. Mr. Bird brought a pink worm. Mrs. Bird brought a green one. Junior ate both worms in one gulp. Then he opened his mouth wide again. We have to get Junior lots more to eat, said Mr. and Mrs. Bird. Hour after hour, day after day, they brought food for Junior. Mrs. Bird got berries and cherries. She got butterflies and caterpillars. She got dragonflies and mosquitoes. She got ladybugs and tiger beetles. He eats a lot. Mr. Bird got crickets and spiders. He got grasshoppers and snails. He got red ants. He got black ants. He got centipedes too. What kind of bird eats so much, said Mrs. Bird. It doesn't matter, said Mr. Bird. He's still hungry and we have to feed him. Weeks went by and Junior never stopped eating. And he never stopped growing. He grew bigger and bigger and bigger. Oh my. Finally, Junior got so big that Mr. Bird said, "It's too crowded up here. Junior has to leave the nest. It's time for him to fly away." "You are right," said Mrs. Bird. "The time has come. We must show him how to fly." Mrs. Bird pushed and pushed. Mr. Bird showed Junior how to fly. "Jump into the air like this," he said, "and then flap your wings." Junior got ready. He took a big breath and jumped. Up, up, up into the air he went. "Flap your wings," yelled Mrs. Bird. "Flap your wings," yelled Mr. Bird. Junior flapped and flapped, but it didn't do any good. He didn't have any wings. Down, down, down went Junior. Down into the water. Splash. It was cool and wet in the water. It was just right for Junior. "You know," said Mrs. Bird, "I don't think Junior was a bird at all." "It doesn't matter," Mr. Bird said. "He's happy now, and just look at him swim." So that's the end of our story, and maybe you guys could look for birds in your backyard and tell me all about them. Have a great day.